Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Cody. I'm going to kind of talk to you today about my traveling through Europe and kind of when I moved to Spain initially when I was 14. Um, we lived in Shalimar, Florida, me and my family, when my dad came home one day and had the news that he would be stationed in Spain, Rota, Spain, for his job. Initially, it was kind of a shock just to hear that we would be moving, so far away. Because for me, that was actually the first time that I had moved across the ocean. When I was born in South Carolina, but for the first 5 years of my life, we lived there, and then after that, we moved over to Florida, and then for 9 years, I lived there. So uh, I had really not known anything different than the stateside, and I mean two states at that. So when I found out that I would be moving, it was quite a shock. Um, for my dad, he was he was pretty calm about it, just because for his job he was used to moving around, not necessarily moving, but um, going to different places because he would go on TDYs for months at a time, different countries. So he's been to these places and all that. But so he was pretty calm about it. For my mom, she was just like me. She had no idea what anything was like on the other side of the ocean. She didn't know what to expect. So she kind of she was down about it and did not. She was not in favor of us moving over to Spain. And me being 14 and kind of not knowing what to think or what to do, I took on her opinion and thought this was pretty much just going to be a bad thing, and I would have to leave my friends and it was just going to be miserable all around. That was the idea of me, of what I thought we would be going through when we moved. When we first, I guess I'll go to the event when we left. We were at the airport. We had our friends there, and we said our goodbyes, and we got on the plane and left. And it was a pretty big plane because it was a 9.5 hour flight, so it was pretty big. We had like TV screens with like we could watch movies and things. It went on through the night, and I tried to sleep, but for me, I was kind of down and stuff, so I couldn't fall asleep, so I just kind of stayed awake and watched movies and whatnot, until we finally landed in a place called Madrid. There's an international airport there where most people fly into when they're going to Spain. So we landed there, pretty pretty unknowing of what to expect. I mean, at least for me and my mom and my siblings, we really didn't know what to expect when we were going to land. So we get there and we start walking around trying to figure out where our next flight was going to be to take us to our actual destination on the base. Which obviously, as you could probably tell, it was pretty difficult because we speak English and they do not. Most of them did. I mean, most of them could like broken English, but for the most part, nobody really spoke English at a, I guess, at a level that we kind of needed them to tell us where we needed to be and whatnot. So that was, as a 14-year-old, that was pretty scary, thinking that if I mean my parents were trying to communicate, but we really couldn't, and we were just trying to figure out where to go. So as a 14-year-old, I was pretty scared of what would happen, and if we would miss our flight, or what was going to happen for the next couple of hours as we tried to figure out where we needed to be. Um, Finally, we did find our flight. There actually was a layover in Madrid airport. I forgot how long it was, but I remember it being a pretty good while that we were sitting in the airport, just kind of waiting for our next flight. We laid down and kind of in the walkways, just up next to the walls, to try and get some sleep because we didn't get any sleep on on the airplane, just because it was all kind of a lot to take in. So I think most of us did not sleep too much. So we tried to get some sleep during our layover, and then finally we did get on our plane and we left the Madrid airport and then flew only about, say, 2 hours, maybe not even that. We flew a couple hours, if that, south to the place called Rota, Spain, where we stayed, and it's a Navy base, a Spanish Navy base, where my dad was going to be stationed for the next 4 years. Initially, getting to the base, it was kind of a relief to see Americans like me and that would speak the same language as me, and just that in itself was probably the biggest relief that I had since I left Florida just a day earlier. Um, so we get there and we check into the Navy lodging, which is going to be kind of a temporary place where we would live until we could find our own home off the base, in the Spanish market and all that. Initially, when we got there, and thinking about how we would find a place to live and how we would get out of the Navy lodging and into a new place, kind of scared me because obviously the language barrier was a huge thing, and I thought, 14-year-old self thought, if we can't talk to him, how are we going to possibly buy a house, So I was definitely not enjoying this whole experience as of yet. I did not want to be there, and I wanted to go back home to Florida with my friends. It wasn't until I started doing sports in high school that I finally kind of realized that it wasn't all bad to be in Spain. When we first got there, maybe the first couple of weeks, we went to the base pool a couple of times just to kind of get out of the lodging and clear our heads and all the negative energy that we were putting off just because we didn't really want to be there. We went to the pool just to kind of relax and swim and stuff, and kind of blow it all off. While we were there at the pool one day, Nick, my older brother, and I went out to swim or whatever, and we were kind of a group of teenagers, probably around our age and stuff, came up to us. About 6 or 7 of them came up to us, asking us, questions like, "Hey, where are you from? Do you guys play sports?" Just kind of trying to figure out what about us and make friends and stuff. And honestly, for me, that was probably the biggest relief of the whole thing, just because, initially I did not want to really talk to people just because I was in such a bad mood because we had to leave. Selfishly, I was in a bad mood. But in the end, I'm kind of glad that they came up to us because I don't see myself actually reaching out to other people at that time just because of my attitude that I had towards the whole situation. So they came up to us and they kind of figured out who we were and just talked to us, and we were conversating and all that. And then we found out that those would be some of the kids that we would be going to school with, playing sports with, and all that. This was far before we even knew what was to be expected of the high school or anything like that. So football was a huge influence on my opinion change that I had towards Spain at this time. Football started maybe, I think, a week after we landed in Spain. And with my kind of the attitude that I had towards being there, football kind of brought me out of that attitude and just kind of gave me something to think about and something other than just being angry at the whole situation. It gave me something to rekindle, I guess, my mind. So we started football, and we went through Hell Week, and then we started practices, and then we had our games and stuff, and we got to travel actually a lot with sports, not just football. We had like soccer, baseball, there was cheer, basketball, so all the different kinds of sports that me and my older brother participated in, mainly just because you get to travel to places like we went to Germany, we went to Canary Islands for baseball. Germany was like football, basketball. We would go to, like, when we went to championships, we would go to Germany. Italy, we went to there to play another school. We went to England, Brussels, we went to Portugal, so just a bunch of different places that at the time I was just like, okay, well, we're just traveling. It's not, whatever. I'm not really thinking anything of it. So honestly, traveling, I think, was the biggest thing that I did not realize was a blessing until maybe my junior year, when I finally realized, I was like, I was thinking, I get to travel to places that people stateside would only dream of traveling, and maybe on an occasional cruise would actually be able to go to. But for the most part, people in the U.S. don't get to go to these places like Germany or the Canary Islands, where the beaches are full with black sand, you know, because it's volcanic beaches and all that. So it's just in the food that we got to eat in these places, and just all this combined, it didn't really hit me until around my junior year, when I finally realized that how lucky I was and how blessed I was to be able to, do the things that I had done. So for the most part, I would say the biggest thing that I learned while I was in Spain and while we were traveling is that I got to finally open up my mind and seeing these different cultures, relating to people who are, foreign to a certain area. Like, for example, coming back to the States, when I would see people who were foreign to America, I wouldn't see them as, different. I would just see them as, a part of this world, and I don't know, it sounds kind of funny, but when you are stuck stateside, you see only what you see in your little bubble in your town, But when you finally get to go to places, different places, maybe it's only stateside that you get to travel. Maybe you only get to travel in different states. The biggest thing is that you get to see these cultures and these differences in people that you never would have been able to see or know about until you got to travel. So for me, getting to travel to different countries, that's like the extreme version of, diversitizing myself, I guess. So I guess the biggest lesson that I learned while traveling through Europe and while going to Spain is that, for one, I was extremely blessed to be able to do what most people could only dream of doing, for traveling and going to, exotic places like the Canary Islands, and getting to go to Germany and Italy and just all this cool stuff. So that's like the biggest blessing that I found out of the whole situation that most people aren't lucky enough to get. The second thing I would kind of say, which could it's a little more touchy, but it is kind of when we first moved to Spain, I had the negative opinion that it was just going to be terrible, and I formed that kind of from my mother, who did not like the idea, and even still to this day does not really like having to be over into a different country. So now that we're back in the U.S., she definitely enjoys it much more. But my point is like, as a 14-year-old, I just took on her opinion, like just without thinking about it, and didn't really form my own opinion, had no idea what was going to even happen while we were there. So I had no reason to hate it, but I did, just merely because my mom didn't like it. So once I kind of grew older and matured a little more, I kind of figured out that it's super, super important to create your own opinion on certain matters or certain situations. Like maybe if you're moving just from state to state and you see it as the end of the world because you're leaving the people that you love in wherever you're living. I mean, I understand that because that's pretty much what happened. But you can't see it as a curse. You have to see it as a blessing, because you get to go and meet new people. You get to go experience new cultures. You get to experience, a whole new life that most people don't get to do because they're stuck in their little town, just living their life because maybe they can't afford it, or maybe they just don't have the opportunity to do what I have done and what maybe some of you are getting ready to do. So I guess if you are maybe a teenager, or if you're like, you're 14 like I was and you're getting ready to do something huge like this, I hope that what my experiences can kind of, show you that even though it seems like the end of the world, it really isn't. And later on down the road, you're going to be happy that you were able to move to a certain place or do a certain thing that you felt extremely uncomfortable about. So I hope that I could help in that process of kind of accepting what's going to happen. I'll see you guys later.